The Scary Show is proud to partner with Dubby Energy, the premier energy drink alternative. If you're like me, you've been consuming at least one of those other energy drinks at least once a day, spending anywhere from $2 to $3 a can. But with Dubby, you get a whole month's supply in just one tub for close to $25 cheaper. And it gets even better. Use promo code The Scary Show for an additional 10% off. Hey, how's it? So, if you've been following the show for the past year and a half, you're already aware that every 6 months I completely change the show from top to bottom and start over from scratch. With February just around the corner, I thought it'd be nice to have a few more guests on. Just talk story as we close out January. So, here with me, I've got two really awesome friends with me today. Will, from the Sci-Fi Center, as well as legendary voice actor Asher the Black 7'4". We're gonna split this into two segments so that both these great guys get some good spotlight. So first up, we'll be talking comics with Will, followed by a couple of creepy tales from Asher the Black 7'4". So welcome back once again to the Scary Show. So tell us, or tell the scaries out there, what is your favorite comic?
Oh wow, that's a hard one. I mean, my favorite comics to read are Batman comics. After that, it goes Green Lantern, and then it goes Daredevil, and those cover several eras.
So what is it about Batman? Because I know what I love about Batman, but what is it? What is it?
Just Batman is, it's always been the semi-relatable of all the characters, as far as, like, you know, even though he performs at the highest level of humanity, as far as his skill and, you know, with his gadgets and everything else he has and his inventions, that could still be us. Whereas with Superman, Green Lantern, things like that, you need fantastical things to be able to relate to them. So I've always been able to relate to Batman, especially when I was a kid.
Yeah, for me, it's always his contingency plans. You know, he's always got what he needs in that belt.
Yeah, he's got a plan for every hero in case they went bad.
Any comics that you could see yourself playing that character in a movie?
No, because I can barely walk straight without tripping over my two very large feet, so I don't think I have the kind of coordination and look to be somebody who would be a superhero.
But if you could, like, who could you see yourself being?
Oh, I could see myself as Black Panther. I could see myself as a Green Lantern. I could see myself as Superman. Yeah, I could. If, like I said, if I had that look, I could see myself as all of those.
Yeah, you know, I love that there's like a diverse Lantern Corps. You know, John Jones and the
John Stewart, you mean?
Yeah, John Stewart. Yeah, like I love that. Like I don't know a whole lot about the Green Lanterns. Like I know
there's 3,600 of them across the entire galaxy. So not only do they have diverse as far as black, white, and all that, they have diversity as far as like alien species. So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, there's if I remember correctly, there's 6 different corps.
Yeah. Later on, you have this. You know, you have the Green Lanterns, Red Lanterns. You know, yeah, all those after the Blackest Night. Yeah, that's a little bit more modern though.
I won $20 off of somebody I used to work security with, because he didn't believe that there was more than just the greens and the yellows.
Oh, you could have won that easily. All you had to do is bring up Sinestro. There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, by that time, I don't think Blackest Night was a thing yet, but the other ones were, and I knew about them because, like, man, I was like such a comic book nerd as a kid, getting into them and everything. My very first comic book that I had in my hands was a coverless Green Lantern comic book.
Coverless, as it in was damaged before you got it, or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, yeah, sounds like my first experience.
Yeah, I had that, and I had a Spider-Man one that I found at the laundromat.
Hey, that's how it happens, though. I mean, because a lot of times as kids, we can't really afford to get into those things. So any way you get, I mean, people find comics, people read comics, they discard them. I'd go to 7-Eleven, and the ones that would get damaged, they would get credit for them and give them away. And sometimes I would be there. So yeah, you know, a lot of us who collect comics have very simple beginnings in them.
Yeah. I remember visiting Coastside Comics in Pacifica over, I think it was near the Lindemar Shopping Center. But back then, that was when that Spider-Man, The Name of Rose series was going out. And
Which series?
Name of Rose.
Oh wow, I can't remember what era that was.
That was I was in like not 6th grade, maybe
Oh, the Rose.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about mid 80s.
Yeah. No, it was definitely in the
No,
either
the Rose,
late 80s, early 90s, cuz
the Rose was created in the early to mid 80s, and he started working with the Hobgoblin.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you realized who he was. He was Richard Fisk, the Kingpin's son. So
yes, and I remember that cover where the Hobgoblin was torn in half, and that gave birth to the Demo Goblin.
Yeah, okay, now that is later on in the 90s. That happened after Inferno. I remember that because it was Inferno that turned him into the Demogoblin. That whole thing that went down with the X-Men.
Yeah, the 90s were such a epic time for comic books. It was such an epic time for music, everything.
Yeah, and music I will agree with. From 93 to 98, alternative music really, really, really probably shaped the way I look at the world, almost as much as metal did for me in the 80s. Comics-wise, I have a problem with the 90s. That's when I first opened up. I opened up in December of 94. And at that time, everything was getting so many prints that the value was going down. And so many people were carrying chromium covers, and that's when you started with your alternate covers, but not in the way that we do them now. The way alternate covers now come out now, they're only a limited amount of them. Back in the 90s, they just wanted to make so much money that they printed as many as they thought they could sell. Like Death of Superman, Evil Ernie, there's things like that. Valiant Comics became a big thing to where there was just so many copies of everything. It took away the collectability out of it, and it really hurt the industry towards the end of the 90s. That's why if you look at what Marvel went to towards the end of the 90s and the beginning of 2000s, they nearly went bankrupt because of in large part because of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they had to sell the rights to all the heavy hitters, and that's what led to the Sony debacles and the
Be honest with you though, given what the MCU has become, I think the MCU is, I call it the Marvel cluttered universe because there's just too much going on. There's just too much going on, and it's too many things jammed into a very short amount of time. And I think that the problem with Marvel is there's cool ass characters in there that just don't get a lot of time because you're telling this giant salad of a story. But sometimes when you're making a salad, you just don't open your refrigerator up and just toss any old thing in there. You know, it'll end up tasting like crap. And I don't think they do a good job sometimes in parsing that out. That's why I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, but Spider-Man is not anyone's sidekick. Spider-Man is the guy who comes into your comic book to when your sales are dragging to lift them up. He's literally the symbol of Marvel Comics, and I just couldn't stomach watching him, hearing him, Mr. Stark. That drove me crazy. Peter Parker never needed Iron Man for anything. He's a boy genius who created everything he had, and to see him to be so dependent because that was the story that they were telling, that's one of the problems. I still like Marvel movies for the most part. I mean, a lot of them I don't like, but just over half of them I do. But that's the problem is the fact that they're telling you one narrative and they're going to do whatever they need to do to bend that character's likenesses to that narrative instead of what makes that character special.
Yeah. I did not like the technological aspect of the spider suit.
No, I hate that little iron spider. I hate that one. I hate it in the comics too.
Well, in the comics, that was due to Doctor Octopus, wasn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, he had his own, and then there was one that Peter was using, and it just became crazy. Just give me the old red, and just like you did at the end of No Way Home, which I thought was the best Spider-Man movie of the trilogy was that one, because at the end he becomes a Spider-Man that he should have been the entire time.
Yeah, you mentioned the variant covers, and you reminded me of this. I think it was not Bloodsport.
Bloodshot.
Bloodshot. The cover that they had where you rub the cover and then the blood appears and disappears.
Yeah, that would have been special if there hadn't been a million of them made. That was a thing. Something like that was cool, but there were so many of them printed. It just, and everybody was speculating buying at that time. And then, like I said, it just got crazy.
Yeah, there were so many gimmicky covers. The foil hologram covers.
Yeah, lenticular hologram. Spider-Man had one where if you turned it, he was putting on his mask.
Yeah. There was a Wolverine one that I had where the cover was like cardboard and it had holes in it where the claws would slash through.
The yellow one. Yeah, the yellow one where the top secret. It was a file. It was a file was what it was. It said top secret and it had his claws ripping through it. And then when you opened up the primary cover, the secondary cover was just him.
Oh,
yep, man. I have that.
Man, I'm remembering all this stuff I've forgotten about. I think somewhere I still have the Cyberforce source book, and I have that one because it was special to me. That was like one of the few comics I was able to hold on to when I went on what I call my epic sojourn, when I left home at 17 and went out into the world with $20 in my pocket and the clothes on my back and just figured it out as I went, still figuring it out. But
yeah,
that comic book and what else was it? The Cyberforce source book, and I think there's a few other ones. There, the collected edition, James O'Barr, The Crow, which I would just like read and look at the pictures.
That's one of the greatest comic book miniseries of all time, right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of people would have never known about it until Brandon Lee.
Yeah. I heard they're trying to remake it.
You know what? I wish them all the luck in the world, but not everything needed to be remade. A lot of what made The Crow very special was the time and the place that it was released. You're never going to recreate 1994. You're never going to create the music scene that we had in 1994, the vibe that we had in 1994. And a lot of these things, when you redo them, like Red Dawn, a lot of these things are products of the environment and the times that they were created in. And you just can't transport that all the time. Some people do a good job. Some people can do retro stuff. But if you're going to do it and you're going to do an update, a lot of the update is going to be taking away the things that just gave you that electricity when you saw that movie back in 1994. So I wish them all the luck in the world. I have my I'm skeptical of how successful they can be with it, though.
Yeah, I hope, as a fan, I hope that they can break the curse and actually make a good one this time, because they've been progressively worse in City of Angels.
Yeah, and the thing about City of Angels that was a problem with any Crow sequel is that the Crow only looked like what Brandon Lee looked like for that night, because that's what Eric Draven looked like. Mm-hmm. Each Crow, if you follow the myths and the entire story of the Crow, each person that he visits is going to have a different type of characteristics. Yeah, they're going to put makeup and stuff on their face in some cases, but it's going to be different. Like one of the Crows that they did way back years and years ago was an Apache Indian, Native American, and his makeup was indicative of his Native American culture, and he looked different. He looked like the environment, that he came from. And Eric Draven, so when you see Crow, City of Angels and Crow's Staircase to Heaven and all that stuff, and when they're, When like the second one, when it's a totally different guy, then it shouldn't look like what Aaron Draven did, because Aaron Draven's look was his own. And
Right.
each visit, each time the crow visits a grave and brings somebody back to life, they're going to take on the likenesses. So every crow should look drastically different. But like I said, once they caught on to that look, they weren't going to let it go.
Yeah, that is true. And the reasons for them painting their face, had to be unique to that individual one. Like Danny's paints, the Ash's son, Danny, the paints that he left behind when the gang came in and killed him. He used those paints to paint his face. And then I think there was a female crow, at least in one of the comics there was.
Yeah, there was a female crow.
And
she was Indian.
Yeah.
And the face painting is a ritual that goes back to the earlier days of the crow, because he's been around hundreds of years, and it's a separation. It's a reminder that when you look in the mirror, you're not of the living anymore. You're here for this specific mission, and the paint focuses you on that mission. You got one night to right that wrong.
Yeah, it's so deep. That's like one of my absolute favorites. And Spawn too. Spawn is another like really deep one, really layered one.
Yeah, there's a lot to Spawn. I think a lot of people dismiss Spawn. I mean, they bought it, but a lot of people dismiss it as far as its story goes, simply because it's the artist. It was Todd McFarlane, and he's so famous for making things look a certain way that they didn't realize that there was a story in there. And now you have several different Spawn comics. You have King Spawn, you have Spawn, you have Scorched, you have Gunslinger Spawn. So there's like several of them now that he does for Image.
Yeah. I was introduced to Spawn one Friday in, I think I was in 7th grade, I think it was, by another friend of mine that loved comics, and he told me, I was like, oh, what is that? He's like, oh, it's a Spider-Man clone. And that's what I had to go on, picking up my first issue of Spawn.
Oh, well, yeah, because remember, Tom McFarlane got, he was doing other stuff, but he got his big jump with his run on Amazing Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. He did Amazing Spider-Man from 298 to 328, and that was an epic run. And in that run, he covered a lot of characters that when Tom McFarlane drew them, he drew things so drastically different, you couldn't wait to see how he was going to make classic characters look. Yeah. He just has a style about him that just made it to where, when you heard Captain America was going to be on the cover of Amazing Spider-Man 323, then I wanted to see how he made him look. I wanted to see how he made the Hulk look, because he had done the Hulk before. I wanted to see how he made Wolverine look. I wanted to see how he would make the Lizard look, and the Hobgoblin and all the Green Goblin. So every time he did a cover, it was great. But yeah, his run on Amazing Spider-Man led right to him going into the Spider-Man comic, just a single Spider-Man comic in 1990. And if you remember, that had the silver covers, and it was put in the bags. So yeah, that was one of the things that kind of like bloated comics up too, because everything had to come in a plastic bag, and they wanted you to buy two so that you could keep one in the bag. And it was like, well.
Yeah, I remember when the Spawn movie came out, I was so hyped for that. It was a little bit disappointing, but for the most part, like I had a good time in the theater.
It wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't the time for it. You just didn't have the technical wherewithal that we have now to make a really kick-ass Spawn movie. There was a lot of stuff in that movie you had to settle with because that's the best we had at the time. But if you were to make that movie today, it would probably be spectacular.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it will be. Last thing I heard on that was they were going for a more horror noir route with that. And that came straight from Todd McFarlane.
Yeah. By the way, they got to get a director for it because he wanted to direct it and be the producer, and he's not a movie producer. So it's like they really need to get a filmmaker in there to make that happen. But they'll get it figured out.
Yeah. I saw a poster for speaking of getting films made, a poster for A Quiet Place 3, and I don't know if it's real or if it's a
No, it's
fan.
real. It's
okay.
real. They've announced that they're working. They've started the beginnings of A Quiet Place 3, and I guess it's going to tell a little bit more of the pre-story and the post-story. I'm not real sure. I know that Krasinski is working on it. I just don't know how far along there and how far in are they are.
Yeah. I got all day for like pandemic and like zombie movies and like, that kind of like conflict story. Like I love those. I can't get enough of them.
It was definitely an interesting story, and The Quiet Place 2 was just as good as The Quiet Place 1, so I enjoyed that as well.
I recently I saw the Last of Us pilot, and I loved it. I wish it was on Netflix, so like the whole season, I could have binge watched the whole season in one night.
Oh, come on, man. You got to watch it one by one and let the build-up happen. You can have binge watching or fry your brain binge watching shit or stuff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't eat. I don't sleep. I don't.
Yeah, it's not good for you. Not good for you at all.
Yeah, it was really well done. I was noticing that they followed the beginning of the first game like really well.
See, I've never played the game. I've never watched the vignettes from the game. So when I jumped into it on Sunday night, that was my first intro into the Last of Us world.
From my recollection, the only thing that really changed was
how you doing? I'm doing it.
Was the lead up to the night where everything goes crazy, and the first infected that we see. If I remember correctly, it was a guy, and he bursted into the Joel's house and through the back patio window. So it was all contained in that house, and then Joel and Tommy came and saved the day. But the ride into the city and then the soldier and everything, that was all spot on. Thank you to Will from the Sci-Fi Center, and we'll be back next week with Ash of the Black 7-4. Subscribe, like, comment, share, and I'll see you next week with a brand new episode of The Scary Show.